Supercuts!
Let's get real for a minute. We're living in a world where drugs are everywhere. Legal, illegal, prescribed, natural, synthetic, you name it. And while some folks want to paint it all in neutral shades of gray, I'm here to say this loud and clear. Not all drugs are equal, and not all drugs are harmless. In fact, some of them open spiritual doors that you really don't want open. We're talking doorways that invite in dark things, demonic things. Now, before anyone rolls their eyes and says, "Come on, it's 2025, not the Middle Ages," hear me out. We're not talking about superstition here. We're talking about real consequences. Mental, emotional, physical, and yes, spiritual. And for believers especially, the stakes are even higher. This isn't about paranoia. This is about discernment. So many of us started using drugs or alcohol because we were hurting, or we wanted to be cool and fit in with the cool kids in the crowd. Maybe we were chasing relief from anxiety or trauma, or just trying to feel something other than empty. That part I get. We've all been there in some form or another. But the problem is, when we try to numb our pain with substances, we open ourselves up to more than just a bad habit. We open ourselves up spiritually.
Whenever I rap about these things, man, whenever I talk, man, it's about people coming out of bondage, bro. It's a very real thing, man. I tell people all the time, meth is one of the most demonic drugs in the world. Like, I lived through this stuff for 4 years. Like, I'm talking about, I literally went 30 days with no sleep in the month of October. And 1 month, and the things I saw, like, scared the heck out of me. Like, I had to call my aunt, who was a pastor, just to pray with me over the phone.
If you're defining spiritual warfare as the production of altered states to be in contact with spirit beings, the answer is yes. If you're talking about the use of drugs to combat evil spirits, then I don't know that the answer would be yes at all. I can't think of an example where biblically drugs are used to combat spiritual forces.
The Bible uses the word pharmakeia. It shows up in places like Galatians and Revelation, and it's where we get the word pharmacy. But back then, pharmakeia wasn't just about medicine. It was about sorcery, mixing potions, altering consciousness to communicate with spirits. And that should be a huge flag for us. Let's be honest, when you use certain drugs, especially the more mind-bending ones, you aren't just relaxing. You're letting your guard down, and you could be inviting something in.
In terms of primary text, they were certainly used to produce altered states, to be in contact with spiritual forces. You get a lot of that, not only in Greco-Roman literature, which is where we usually think of it, Paul's reference to pharmakeia, for instance, but it goes all the way back into the ancient Near East, where you get mind-altering or this production of altered states to put you in a different state of mind, in a different frame of mind, in a different mental place. You know, it's hard to know what vocabulary to use.
Let's start with alcohol. It's legal, it's socially accepted, and Yeshua himself turned water into wine, so we know it's not automatically evil. But let's not twist that into an excuse to drink ourselves into oblivion. Here's what people don't always talk about. When you black out from drinking, your body keeps moving, even when your mind checks out. That's dangerous. And there are stories, too many stories, and I have some of them myself, of people waking up after a bender and hearing about things they did but don't remember. Some say, you were like a different person, or you had this dark look in your eyes. Yeah, because you weren't the one in control anymore. I've heard it called possession, and I've seen people say it felt like someone or something else was driving their body. And if that doesn't send chills down your spine, it should. There's a reason why they call alcohol spirits. Of course, moderation matters. If you can't drink without losing control, it's time to rethink why you're drinking at all.
But because things that were experienced or seen while under the influence of certain drugs, the two things became associated: contact with the other side and then the use of certain mind-altering drugs.
They're completely psychotic. They look like zombies.
Yes, somebody's gonna shoot at me.
Nobody's gonna shoot you.
They're hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there.
Naked and out of their minds.
Doesn't look like he has clothes on at this time.
You've seen the bizarre behavior. People ripping their clothes off, leading police on chases, breaking into homes, acting paranoid.
Dude is naked.
No, they're not mentally ill. They're high on cheap synthetic drugs like Flakka, Spice, and K2.
Then you've got the horror show drugs. I'm talking about Flakka, bath salts, and methamphetamines. If you've seen videos of people growling, stripping naked, chewing their own flesh, or attacking strangers with superhuman strength, you know what I mean. This isn't just psychosis. This is spiritual insanity. These drugs don't just alter the mind, they destroy it. And when that mind is broken open, demons don't need much of an invitation. I've heard first-hand testimonies, and I've given my own. People who were sweet and kind turned violent and paranoid under the influence. Hallucinations of demons, voices in their head, visions of betrayal. It all starts blending into one long waking nightmare. And here's the scary part. Some of them didn't come back the same. Drugs like meth change you on a soul-deep level. They drag you into a lower spiritual frequency, the same one the demonic feeds on.
I heard from friends that it was similar to weed, and so that's when I ended up trying it. Started to have visual distortions, I had audio distortions, I lost sense of where I was, even in my own body. Like, I had no idea who I was at that point. I'm scared because I don't know what's going on. This whole body felt hot. I started profusely sweating, and like I said, I was just lost in my own body. It was nothing that I would want to experience again, ever.
And the mind-altering part is important. It's not like if you take an aspirin, you're committing some kind of sin, that we shouldn't take medications because of pharmakeia. I'm talking about mind-altering, hallucinogenic, these sorts of things that are pretty hard drugs. Doing this intentionally and with the intention of producing an altered state. That's not what today's medical community is about. So to conflate the two and use one side to beat the other side over the head is really flawed thinking.
But I don't do drugs. These are prescribed by doctors. Now this one gets tricky, because not all prescriptions are bad. Sometimes medication is necessary. I'm not here to shame anyone who needs help managing their health. But there is a dark side, especially when it comes to mind-altering medications used for psychiatric reasons. We've seen it in halfway houses and mental health facilities. People taking their meds and then suddenly talking in strange voices, fighting something we can't see, shaking uncontrollably like something is battling for control. The look in their eyes changes, their posture, their presence. Are all psychiatric medications demonic? No. But some of them open spiritual doors, especially when misused or mixed. Be cautious. Be prayerful. Don't blindly take what you're handed. Ask God for discernment and wisdom, and seek healing holistically whenever possible.
What does it do to your spirit? That's the one thing I don't think we talk about that very often.
It makes you a different person, and I try to be very careful about not pretending to be more pious than I am, but I do believe in spiritual war, and I do think that there is really something to ingesting stuff like that. I mean something real, not just some chemical changes in your head. I think you should be very careful tempering with allowing things into your body. You know, the term spirits, that originated because my understanding of this is that term came from people thought you were putting spirits into your body. Probably are. So opioids are just that in a different form, is what I would think. And, you know, people get mad at me for this, but I think the same thing about other drugs. Like, if you're communicating with some entity because of something you've taken, I think I would take that pretty seriously.
Now we come to marijuana. Mary J. Weed. The one that everyone wants to argue about. Yes, it's legal in a lot of places. And yes, some people claim it helps with pain and anxiety. But let's get real. A lot of people who smoke weed aren't doing it for medical reasons. I'd say the majority are doing it to escape, to feel numb, to detach. But be careful of what we are detaching from. The Bible tells us to be sober-minded, alert, and aware of our enemy, the devil, who's always prowling, looking for someone to devour. That's in 1 Peter 5, verse 8. And it so happens to be one of my favorite verses in the Bible. Weed might not make you growl and snarl, but it does alter your mind. I'm sure same thing can be said of caffeine and nicotine. But weed can make you spiritually sleepy. And in that sleepiness, things could creep in. You don't need a blunt to feel peace. You need Yeshua. You need to renew your mind, not deaden it. There's a difference between rest and sedation. And weed can blur that line real fast.
Like addiction, in its latest stage, if it keeps going on, is just, it's actual demonic possession that takes away everything about yourself or maybe someone you know, a friend, a family member. It literally destroys who they are, and they're not even a person anymore. They're just, how do I put this? They're literally the demon of, I won't quit. They're literally possessed by a demon. Like, I'm not kidding.
Here's where it gets really wild. Psychedelics like DMT, LSD, and magic mushrooms don't just make you trip. They tune your mind to another realm. And that realm, it's not always full of angels and rainbows. The unseen realm is a dangerous place to travel without Yeshua at your side. Shortcuts like drugs and occult practices always lead to dark places. People report seeing beings, entities, aliens, spirits, sometimes called beautiful, sometimes terrifying, but consistent. That's the kicker. The hallucinations line up across people, cultures, and locations. How? Because they're not just hallucinations. These are encounters, and they are not of God. If you want a spiritual experience, don't seek it in a chemical. Seek it in the Word, in prayer, in surrender. Yeshua is the way to the Father, not ayahuasca.
In the list in Deuteronomy 18 of prohibited practices, you get things like potions or certain plants referenced. So when you get into that area, again, this is where these mind-altering things come. And so your shamans or your medical practitioners of certain cultures, pagan cultures maybe, might be known for producing these charms or these sorceries or these herbal solutions.
Now, not every drug is a demon, but all open doors. Some drugs enslave, some destroy. Others whisper sweet nothings while they rot your soul slowly. But here's the deal. Even if the drug itself isn't a demon, it can still serve as a doorway to one. Addiction begins when we let something else rule our thoughts, our choices, our identity. And when we put something, anything, in the place of God, it becomes our master. That's the real danger. Not just a chemical, not just a high, but the shift in allegiance, the slow surrender of self to something dark, deceptive, and destructive. Now listen, this isn't a legalistic, don't touch, don't taste kind of message. We are not saved by rules, and we are not meant to live in fear. Yeshua gave us freedom. But with that freedom comes responsibility. If you can drink a glass of wine in moderation and stay clear-headed and aligned with God, fine. If you can take you a toke or two at the end of the day when all responsibilities are done, and it helps you to wind down and you spend that time with the Lord, then hey, cool. But if you find yourself using substances to cope, to escape, or to feel closer to the spirit realm, stop, back away. That's not freedom. That's bondage. And if you're already struggling with addiction, please hear this. I'm living proof that you are not beyond hope. You are not too far gone. And hey, you're not alone. Yeshua came to set the captives free, and he means all captives, including the ones who feel like they're chained to a pipe, a pill bottle, or a needle. Drugs aren't just a health risk, they're a spiritual one. They weaken your defenses, confuse your mind, and in some cases, open a very real door to darkness. Whether it's alcohol, weed, meth, or even something legal and packaged with a fancy label, it all needs to be tested through the lens of Scripture and Spirit. You were created for something greater than the temporary escape that drugs offer. You were made for clarity, for courage, for communion with God. And that only comes when you're sober, alert, and anchored in truth. So let's stay vigilant. Let's watch and pray. And if you're struggling, reach out. Reach out here in the comments. There'll be links down below, places that you can call, text, or reach out to. There is freedom in Yeshua. Real, lasting, chain-breaking freedom. Until next time, Shalom, shalom.